So I'm here with Catherine Knibbs, who is a PhD clinical researcher specializing in trauma, specifically cybertrauma. And we thought it would be a great idea to get some of her points of view because it's pretty safe to say that what the planet is going through right now is quite traumatic. So could you give a little intro about your points of view and how it applies to this current situation?
Yeah, so thank you for having me, Alex. And where to start with this trauma that we're currently experiencing. So trauma, to give you a little bit of background, is slightly different to anxiety, insofar as this is the impact that people will be feeling. And we know from studies that happen with children called the ACEs study, so the Adverse Childhood Experiences, that trauma really has an impact all the way down to the cellular level, and then it has an impact going forward in terms of how we manage our regulation facilities, so whether we can self-regulate and what that actually means in this current crisis. So right now, my experiences through watching on social media and speaking with a lot of my clients and friends and family, that people have moved into a state of that kind of fight-flight response that you'll hear people mentioning. But what I'm actually seeing is a dysregulation. So I'm seeing lots and lots of people who are moving into a space where their past is beginning to emerge in the present. So their ability to regulate themselves has massively changed. And I'm seeing this in terms of behaviours online, behaviours between people, and really, we're talking about the capacity for people to be able to manage in the here and now. Okay,
so could you expand a little bit about the self-regulation concept? What does that actually mean for people?
Yeah, so jumping on theories around child development, attachment, and going all the way back to trauma. When we're quite young, what happens is we have an other, usually called the primary caregiver, and they enable us to feel safe in the world, and to quote Dan Siegel, feel seen, soothed, safe, secure. And that gives us the capacity to manage our emotions. But we know from kind of the biohacking world that the way that we regulate our nervous system actually is that kind of facility to be able to manage in the here and now in terms of stress. So when we're quite young, we look to another person to regulate our temperature, manage our emotions, help us feel safe in the world. And what I'm noticing is there's a lot of what we call in transactional analysis, script behaviours. So a lot of people are currently not managing because perhaps they weren't educated, perhaps they weren't soothed, perhaps they weren't taught how to manage their emotions when they were younger. And what is happening is this is being evoked and elicited in the current crisis. So self-regulation follows co-regulation. And if we weren't given that space, if we didn't have that other to help us learn how to do that, we're now in that space and place where it's very difficult for us to do it on our own.
Okay, so you might be able to kind of like identify if it's not yourself who's experiencing it, and the people in your network who are handling this a little bit worse than other people. So how can we sort of help those people? And if we're finding it in ourselves, how can we help ourselves? What are the hacks or solutions?
Okay, so I think one of the things is to say we've probably noticed it in a lot of other people in terms of let's think about the panic buying that happened. So where information was being shared, and some of it was accurate and some of it was inaccurate. You know, we're moving into that space of information, misinformation and disinformation. And what's currently happening is people are dysregulating. They're moving out of that space and place where they're able to regulate their autonomic nervous system. So some of the hacks that I use with my clients and myself are I tend to move into using technology actually. So I will go and do some heart rate variability work. I am an avid heart math advocate, so I use biofeedback with mostly all of my clients, so it's not a grandiose statement there, and it's about taking myself into a space where I'm going, okay, I'm beginning to feel a little bit out of sync. I don't feel safe in the world right now, so what I need to do is go and find that space and place that I can now take some time for myself. That might be, so simple hacks might be going and getting a warm bath. For me, it's going and popping into the sauna, doing a bit of heart rate variability work. I sometimes use simple neurofeedback with clients as well. So there's Muse headbands. There is an absolute plethora of technology which we can use. Mm-hmm. But there are simple techniques which are breathing. And quite often, people who are in a stressed state are not paying attention to how they're breathing. So when we're in that fight, flight, or withdrawal place, one of the things we know is the autonomic nervous system shifts about. And from the polyvagal work of Stephen Porges, getting hold of your becoming aware, actually, that's the first step, becoming aware and getting hold of your breathing process and taking it to a space where you change your breathing. Now, for me, there's also another little hack here, which is to be aware of what that brings up for you. So for some people who have real big T traumas in their background, so they might have sexual abuse, they might have domestic abuse, there might be big issues that are within their past, breathing techniques can sometimes be quite evocative for people. So it's really trying to get in tune with what helps you and what works for you. And that's really pretty similar to the biohacking world of N=1. So find something that works for you, find something that helps you feel safe. And if that's going and sitting with your pet, going and taking a warm bath, having a walk, closing your eyes and concentrating on your breath, using a meditation app, it's really very, very individual. So it's using those tiny little areas that we can to try and hack into what works for us.
Mm-hmm. Great. So I can also relate to a lot of those things. I'm a HeartMath user, Muse user as well.
Yeah.
These are sort of, let's say, slightly advanced techniques, but if you want to do the basics, breathe in 4 seconds, breathe out 4 seconds, just do that and repeat as long as you can, and you will by default just drop into a calm state. So that's very helpful for people. Now, what would you say to parents specifically in these kinds of situations? Are there any specific differences for them?
Yes. Yes and no. We're all in what I would say is this fight against this common enemy. And I think what's difficult for a lot of people at the moment is the not knowing. So trauma tends to evoke a lot of difficulties in terms of knowing versus not knowing. And I think one of the phrases that gets used for psychotherapy is we're the guardians of the grey. Yeah. So there's no black and no white. We're in the middle. We're guardians of the grey. And that means helping people get into that space where not knowing is okay. And worldwide, we are in a space of we don't know. Mm-hmm. There are no clear answers here, which makes the difficulty cognitively of understanding where we go next quite difficult to really understand for a lot of people. So how long will we be stuck inside it's not knowing? And then as a parent, that can be really difficult because children have a why state of being in the world. That's how they operate. How long are we here, mummy? How long do we have to do this, daddy? What are we doing, granddad? For everybody, there is a I don't know answer. And for parents, this is about having that self-compassion and being okay with not knowing. We don't all have the answers. I'm a parent, and I have to say regularly, I don't know the answer to that. But what I do know is that it's okay to not know. And that what we can do is we can talk about how that feels in terms of, discombobulation, and how it feels in terms of not knowing the answer. And that can be dysregulating within itself.
Okay.
So for parents, self-compassion, take a step back, breathe, and be honest, be transparent, and be as congruent as you can with your children about not knowing. And also in that space and place, I do know that a lot of the parents I've talked with this last week are now having to be home teachers. They're also stuck at home and not getting space to kind of regulate themselves. That it's okay when you do have a rupture in the relationship, that you can take the time to go back and work with your child and apologise and repair the rupture. Okay. That's okay too.
Nice.
We are all human.
Nice. So, okay, so that there is like the parental view helping the child. What if you're the person who's needing the help? How do you ask for help? Or how do you're calling it co-regulation?
Yes. Now, asking for help is one of the most difficult things for humans to do, because we feel very, very regular. We feel like we can't ask. It's a sign of weakness, and not knowing how to ask is also an issue. So it depends on your upbringing, about how you were soothed, or how you were then co-regulated in terms of being able to ask for help. And we are in a world of technology. You know, you can send a text message to somebody, you can ring them up, you can do FaceTime, whatever it is that you need to do in terms of technology. There's now lots of different ways for asking for help. And right now it is okay to ask for help. This is one of the things that I'm hoping people can get from this, is it's acceptable to ask for help. It's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of courage. It's a sign of bravery. And asking for help will actually get you something. It might not get you what you want, and it might not regulate you, and it might not give you all of the answers, but asking for help is the autonomous thing that we can try to do.
Okay, so let's say that you find yourself in a stressed state, and then that triggers you to think, okay, let me ask someone for help. How would you go about that? Do you have any tools for going about that? Like, do you set it up with a request, or how does it work?
So when I work with my clients, one of the things that happens in a stressful state is certain parts of the brain shut down, and we're not able to cognitively work out what it is that we want to say or do. So perhaps, as I would advise clients, maybe write a list beforehand about those questions that you would want to ask if you are needing help. So the could use, can use, please, those kinds of statements, and maybe write them down on a piece of paper. And when you feel overwhelmed, which, you know, we're going to feel this up and down really, really often actually within the world, you then have that thing that you can go back to. So it might be that you've done it on your phone in notes, you might have written it down on a piece of paper, it could be on your laptop, your PC, but it enables you to put that question, put that request out there. And one of the things is if you ask and make a request, it's more likely to be complied with than if you make a demand. So it's about, as well, your language. So I feel is also something very, very important to have in your discussions, and that enables somebody to say, these are my feelings. And for the recipient of the request, we don't get to negate somebody else's feelings. If they are terrified, that is okay. If they are slightly anxious, that's also okay. And it's not about us as the recipients and the giver of help, but also it's about the request. So how would you do that? How would you actually emphasize that you are in need of something? Well, that's going to take a whole heap of going inside and kind of getting in touch with exactly what it is you're trying to ask for. So generally do it when you're not in a state of distress, so that you've got something to lean on afterwards.
Nice. Okay. You mentioned earlier on something about self-compassion. Could you speak to that in terms of the climate, the crisis, etc.?
Yeah, so there's going to be a lot of people flipping their lid. There's going to be a lot of emotional meltdowns. There's going to be moments when people don't feel like they're coping. And this is about recognising that is a normative part of being a human. And to be able to give yourself that little bit of a... So I take a technique from Kristen Neff, actually, with a lot of my clients. And I ask people to put their hand on their heart, and quite often to accompany it with the other hand. So you might be a right on the bottom, left on the bottom, it doesn't really matter. Dan Siegel also does hand on the chest and hand on the stomach. And what you get to say is, really, this is really tough, and I am doing the best that I can with all of the tools that I've got.
Nice. So that's a nice little routine there.
And yeah, so there's lots of other things that come out of the therapy world, where we have what are called butterfly hugs, which is where you kind of hold both of your arms at the same time. There is there is just this moment of going, this is tough. And, you know, being a parent is tough, and being a person in the world is tough right now. And being somebody who can't get to another family member is so tough that we are all, and I think in terms of, and I'm just going to go with the heart math thing here, I think the global resonance at the moment is we are all struggling, and that is okay. And compassion for others is to recognise that struggle and to want to help. So to turn the mirror on yourself is to recognise that you too are also struggling, and that it's okay to have moments of dysregulation.
Understood. Okay, so I've got a question for you.
Okay.
Let's fast forward several years in the future. How do you want to remember this moment in time that we're going through?
Good question. I would like to see, actually, this was a shift in humanity's collectiveness rather than competition. I think there's something about, we have moved into a space of I'm going to go with, actually, it's Greg Braden who says this, that there is something about the human capacity to be cooperative far supersedes competition. And I think what I am beginning to notice is, you know, there's a lot of platforms appearing on social media. There's a lot of people reaching out. I mean, you're doing it, Alex. You're creating something where people are coming together to assist and, you know, be with other people. Even though we can't do it in the same room and get their energy, we can still do it through a screen. And, you know, my research is about screens. I have always said it's about attachment. It's about connection. And this is what we're currently doing. So I think this is a moment in time where I would like to see in 10, 20 years' time that when I'm explaining it to people, I say, and then there was that time where the common enemy that we couldn't see became the thing that actually created the new humanity plus, you know, the new humanity forward, the new humanity togetherness. Nice.
Well, I have a list of questions here that I'm just trying to choose various ones from, the things that we haven't covered, for example. Have you changed your routines or rituals at all during this time?
Not really, because I'm as we were just saying before we even started, I'm a bit of a flow student, bit of a biohacker. I try and maintain my own mental health and emotional health and physical health. Yeah. So apart from the fact that my work has changed from being, you know, play therapy, creative therapy, and in the room with people, I've actually moved to an online medium, which I'm comfortable with anyway, because my background is engineering and IT anyway. So not really. My routine is actually, I'm finding more time for myself at the moment.
Nice win.
It is for me, yeah.
Yeah, and what kind of authorities or you know, shining examples are you finding right now to follow what's going on, or who are you feeling are the brightest voices at the moment?
I tend to follow funnily enough, well-regulated people, because they're kind of my people, if that makes sense. But I am looking towards those with an I'm going to say an allopathic and holistic viewpoint of the world. So I'm certainly staying away from the conspiracy theorists. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to stay with those that have a good connection with good research and evidence-based practices. So Neurohacker, Rebel Wisdom. I'm definitely on. Pardon? Rebel Wisdom.
Rebel Wisdom.
Rebel Wisdom. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so Daniel Schmachtenberger did a fantastic interview the other week about COVID, and it was very informative, but it was also taken from, you know, the John Hopkins, it's taken from the CDC, good evidence-based areas, rather than the purported rubbish. I nearly went into sweary land then. The stuff that's on social media. Yeah. And, you know, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult, because filtering it, and this is the other thing as well, is when we're in a state of heightened stress, we're not in that critical thinking, you know, we're certainly not in beta brainwave state and able to think with the prefrontal cortex and weigh up what's good information versus misinformation. And I think that's another thing that's happening, is we're being bombarded with irregular, information. It's not coming out with a consistent framework, and that's one of the things that leads to people not being able to kind of weigh up the information and understand it. So I'm choosing, I'm off the news, I'm only on social media where I need to be, because my profession at the moment is probably making me quite angry in terms of not knowing how to work online safely, and there's a whole plethora of problems there. So I'm tending to listen to my podcasts, listen to my audiobooks, read what I'm doing about my own health, and sticking with pretty much the biohacking, the functional health, and those with an evidence-based background.
Beautiful. Okay, well, I think we can wrap up there. I would ask you, obviously we're going to put the ways for people to follow you and learn more about your work, etc. But what kind of parting words would you want to leave our audience with?
I think it's okay to not be okay, and that sounds so cliche that actually there is something about this is something I'm managing myself, and I'm doing that self-compassion thing. So I'm about to go. I've massively bought into some of the vulnerabilities over the last 2 weeks. I've reacted to some things where ordinarily I wouldn't. I've found myself, almost taking a distant, dissociative approach to certain things, and it's really quite curious to notice what I'm doing myself. And I'm okay with this greyness. I'm okay with not knowing. I'm okay with we don't have the answers just yet. And I'm also okay. So my eldest son is in the army, and we had a conversation about him having to step up and what the military might be doing in this country. And I said, I don't like what's happening with you at the moment, and it's okay for me to not like the fact that you are now, like the NHS, you're going to be front and centre, but I also know that it's okay that I feel like that. I'm a parent, and because I don't want you to be hurt, because I don't want you to be injured or anything like that, it's okay for me to notice those feelings, and my goodness, they come up and they go whoosh. And it's really, really difficult to hold on to them sometimes. So it's okay to not be managing, and then it's okay to reach out for help. And it's okay when we don't get the help that we require if we feel pissed at that. It's because not everybody's going to be able to meet our needs right now.
Nice. And would you, like, the word that comes to mind based on what you just said is equanimity? Maybe?
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, this brings us back to those kind of biological homeostatic phrases, doesn't it? And yeah, this is, we are going to go up and down in terms of autonomic regulation, emotional regulation. We need to get in touch with what's going on for ourselves and be okay with the fact that other people are not regulating in the same way as us as well. So if I'm working with families, I quite often show them that they've all got different autonomic arousal levels, and the way that their bodies move is, even within one family, is different to each other. And recognizing that, some people might need to withdraw, and some people might need to be doing something to discharge energy, and that it's okay that we all regulate in a very different way, but acknowledging that this is me and this is you.
Beautiful. Okay, well, thank you very much, Catherine. Really appreciate your time and contribution. We may be putting a presentation from you together, or sharing a presentation from you. That's something we'll talk about. But otherwise, thank you so much for being a part of the Health Hacking Summit.
You're welcome. It's a privilege.
Thank you so much.